All right, so there's a question that I used to ask myself a lot when I was, I guess, closer to like college age. And that question is, am I a good person or are you a good person? If I'm asking that to myself. And to be honest, these days I don't really care for that question. Um, I'm going to actually read out what I wrote about it just a little bit. It was something I wrote a while back. So it's an interesting question to ask yourself that I think most people answer too quickly. It's either I try to be a good person, or I am a good person, or I'm not really a good person. But what makes you a good person? How do you determine that answer? That isn't the focus I'll be trying to tackle. Instead, I'll come up with what I think is the optimized answer for me personally. So that answer is to think that you're a human being that makes mistakes and that you can always try to be better. So I wrote this a while back, and I don't know how like much I agree with it now. Um, it's a good mindset for sure, but to sort of address the question itself, obviously, like I think it's a good idea to try to be a good person if you can be in the definition, in your own definition. Um, but of course, like that's a very, very subjective thing. Depending on like who you're interacting with and how you treat people differently, you can be a good person to like let's say your mom or your family, and then you're like a shit person to like let's say your cousin or your like friend's friend or something like that. Like it's very, very subjective and situational, and like there's kind of no point in really thinking about it other than to question certain things that you've done. And in those cases you should just ask yourself, did I do the best or right thing in that situation, instead of asking such a general question of whether or not you're a good person. And that's sort of how I think more of these days, instead of asking generic questions like that. Um, Definitely different way of thinking, me back then compared to now. But I do have this like list of thoughts that I had a while back that I just want to eventually check off and address and like throw it away so I can no longer have it on my list of things to talk about. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it, and I feel like for myself, that mindset that I mentioned at the very end, where I try to just think that yes, I can make mistakes, I will make mistakes, um, but overall, I'll still try to be better. I think that's a good mindset overall. Like, I think just trying to see where you can be better, even if you are kind of like considered a good person by a lot of people, and you are doing like good overall, like it doesn't hurt to try to just be like, better in some way. Like you don't have to stress out about it, but just like think about the small elements of like, oh, could I have done this better? Could I have said this better? Could I have performed a little bit better if it was, let's say, like a business meeting or whatever. Like there's always something where like maybe I could have done a little bit better in some area or some small thing, right? And that mindset doesn't hurt, and it sort of counteracts the like, oh yeah, I'm a good person. Like you have the confidence of saying that you're a good person, and you don't really have to change much or do anything about it, right? So I think past me had it right in that sense, where that mindset can help you continue to develop to be like the best person you can be, and and maybe people will consider you a good person along the way. That's pretty much it for this one. I know it's a bit of a like, I really don't have too much else to say about it, and that's probably why I left it on the list un brainstormed, I guess, like just not developed. The idea is not very developed because overall it's not a great question. It's just a very, very generic question that doesn't really lead to that many interesting things. I think you really got to talk about situation by situation and then ask yourself if you've done the best you could in those situations. That's a better question to ask if you happen to be asking yourself this question. Like maybe try reframing it. Okay, that's my advice for this one. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.